In the world of WWE, everything is usually carefully scripted to tell dramatic stories inside the ring. However, things don't always go according to plan. There are moments when anger, rivalry, or pride push wrestlers beyond the boundaries of entertainment, turning what was meant to be a staged match into a real confrontation. And it's these moments that leave an unforgettable mark, shocking fans while keeping them glued to the screen. A real snake bite from Jake, the Snake, Roberts. The rivalry between Jake, the Snake Roberts and Macho Man, Randy Savage was one of WWE's most intense and disturbing storylines. But its most shocking moment didn't come from scripted drama. It came when Jake Snake actually sank its fangs into Randy Savage's arm live on television. How do you fake a snake bite? The truth is, you can't. If you want it to look real, it has to be real. The scene was carefully planned, but things started to go sideways when Savage grew suspicious. The idea of letting a snake bite him was already pushing the limits, and he didn't buy Jake's assurance that the snake had been devenomed. Unwilling to trust Jake's word, Savage demanded proof. He insisted Jake let the snake bite him first. Reluctantly, Jake agreed. But the snake didn't just nip at him, it locked its jaws onto his skin, and Jake had to endure nearly 10 minutes of real pain before Savage was convinced it was safe. Jake left the rehearsal hurting and furious, feeling forced into a situation he never agreed to. By the time filming rolled around, Jake's irritation hadn't faded. He deliberately slapped the snake to rile it up, making it more aggressive. So when it lunged at Savage's arm, the bite was so forceful that the snake refused to let go. The screams that echoed through the arena weren't part of the act. They were Randy Savage's genuine reaction to being coiled up and viciously bitten by a real snake. Jake struggled to pry the snake off, and it took several tense minutes before it finally released Savage's arm. On screen, the moment was terrifying and mesmerizing. Viewers couldn't look away because they knew they were witnessing something brutally real. No camera trick, no stunt work, just pure, unscripted pain. To fans, it became a legendary moment etched in WWE history. But for Randy Savage, it was likely a nightmare he'd rather forget. And for Jake Roberts, it was a memory of being forced into a painful stunt by a wary co-star, turning a shocking segment into a scene that pushed both men far beyond the boundaries of performance. A real kick that silenced The Miz. Everyone knows The Miz as one of WWE's biggest loudmouths. He's a master at getting under his opponent's skin with nothing more than his words. But on one fateful night in 2012 on Monday Night Raw, Kofi Kingston shut him up, not with a comeback, but with a thunderous kick that was anything but scripted. Kofi was setting up for his signature move, Trouble in Paradise, a spinning kick designed to look devastating while being completely safe. But that night, he misjudged the timing and distance. His foot connected squarely with The Miz's face at full force. There was no acting, no pulling back, just a raw, real impact. The Miz dropped instantly. Blood poured from a deep gash on his face, and he required multiple stitches afterward. Thankfully, he didn't suffer a concussion. What made the moment even more shocking was The Miz's reaction, or lack thereof. He didn't lose his temper, and he didn't leave the ring early. Instead, he finished the match like nothing had happened. When it comes to toughness, The Miz has built quite the reputation. He suffered a concussion after a nasty head bump at WrestleMania 27 and even lost a tooth from a brutal elbow by AJ Styles. But Kofi's accidental kick that night stands out as one of the most chilling moments in his career. It was one of those rare instances when a worked move turned real, and for a few seconds, the entire WWE arena fell completely silent. CM Punk and the pipe bomb that shook WWE. It wasn't just a promo. It was an explosion, and CM Punk was the one who pulled the trigger. That night, there were no flashy lights or confetti raining down as Punk walked to the stage. Instead, he simply sat cross-legged at the top of the entrance ramp, microphone in hand, and unleashed everything he had bottled up for years, not as a character, but as his unfiltered, genuine self. In just a few seemingly improvised minutes, CM Punk shattered the fourth wall, an unspoken rule in WWE, and began openly criticizing the company, from top executives to the biggest stars. He took direct shots at Vince McMahon, accusing him of running WWE like an outdated machine. He mocked John Cena, calling him WWE's overprotected golden boy. And jaws dropped when he mentioned names that were supposedly off-limits, Paul Heyman, Brock Lesnar, sending shockwaves through the audience. While parts of the speech were reportedly cleared beforehand, Most of it came straight from a place of raw frustration, years of feeling overlooked and mistreated. Punk wasn't just addressing the crowd. He was practically shouting at the heart of WWE itself. That's what made the promo so powerful. It felt real, it was fierce, and it was unlike anything ever aired on WWE television. That moment didn't just break the script, it nearly derailed his upcoming match with John Cena. Fans no longer cared about who would win the title. They only wanted to hear what CM Punk would say next. And that's when the term pipe bomb was born. Forever etched in wrestling history as a promo so real, so raw, and so unforgettable, it redefined what was possible on the mic in WWE. Jackass and a painful lesson in the WWE ring. This was a clear example of how inviting celebrities to WWE can sometimes turn a performance into a total disaster. Remember the Jackass crew? They made a name for themselves with outrageous, death-defying stunts just to get a laugh. But once they stepped into a WWE ring, they quickly learned that this wasn't the place for reckless jokes. When the Jackass team appeared on an episode of Monday Night Raw to promote Jackass #, things quickly took a turn. Their segment was interrupted by Umaga, the Samoan bulldozer, with an intimidating build and a cold stare. Still, Steve-O kept laughing, clearly not taking the situation seriously. And that lack of respect is exactly what sent everything spiraling out of control. According to the original plan, Umaga was supposed to hit a few light moves and walk away, just enough for entertainment. But Steve-O refused to sell any of the attacks. In WWE terms, that means he didn't act hurt or go down when hit, violating a core part of wrestling's unspoken code. That pushed Umaga over the edge. After landing a crushing Samoan splash, Steve-O laughed it off again, throwing the rhythm of the segment into chaos. At that point, Umaga stopped playing. The fake punches turned into real hits. Brutal stomps to the head and full contact strikes followed, one after another. It was no longer a show, it was a real punishment for someone who had disrespected the rules of the game. WWE officials were forced to cut away and switch scenes to avoid airing the embarrassing moment live on TV. Later, Armando Alejandro Estrada, Umaga's manager at the time, confirmed that Steve-O had been warned in advance but still acted irresponsibly. Laughing after every blow and ignoring instructions, he was practically begging for a real beatdown. And Umaga didn't hold back. Backstage, when Steve-O finally came to, he cluelessly asked, "Is it our turn yet?" having no memory that he'd just been wiped out in front of a live audience. That absurd moment became a harsh lesson for the entire Jackass crew. From that day on, whenever they returned to WWE, their attitude was completely different. They'd learned the hard way. In this ring, selling a move isn't just a performance technique, it's a sign of respect. Respect for your opponent, for the fans, and for the art of sports entertainment itself. The devastating punch to Shawn Michaels' wife on live WWE television. In 2008, the rivalry between Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho wasn't just one of the best feuds of the year, it was one of the most gripping and realistic storylines WWE ever produced. Every confrontation between these two legends set the ring ablaze. But no one could have predicted that one of the most real moments of the entire feud would involve not the wrestlers themselves, but someone completely outside the ring, Shawn Michaels' real-life wife. During a dramatic segment on live TV, Jericho threw a punch that landed squarely on Rebecca, Shawn's wife. Millions watching assumed it was just another tightly choreographed part of the show. But it wasn't. The punch was completely unintentional, and it was never supposed to happen. Chris Jericho later recounted the incident in his autobiography. He explained that the three of them, himself, Shawn, and Rebecca, had rehearsed the scene earlier that day. The goal was to make it feel intense, but safe. Jericho had thrown thousands of worked punches throughout his career and was confident he could pull it off with perfect timing, stopping just short of contact. "I was incredibly tense," Jericho admitted. "This wasn't a trained performer. This was Shawn Michaels' wife, a civilian. I told her not to move so I could gauge the distance properly. All I needed was one clean, worked punch like I'd done so many times before. But I missed the mark." As Jericho threw the punch, things went off track in a split second, and his fist connected directly with Rebecca's face, causing real pain. The expression on Jericho's face was instantly genuine, shocked, apologetic, and horrified. He backed away immediately, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry." Medical staff rushed in to check on Rebecca, while Shawn Michaels' eyes turned cold, blank, and full of barely contained rage. The tension in the arena was thick enough to cut with a knife. Fortunately, Rebecca, despite being hurt, remained conscious and tried to defuse the situation. She looked at Jericho and half-joked, "Is that all you've got?" That one line helped calm Shawn down, at least for the moment. Though the incident was an accident, it unintentionally pushed the Jericho-Michaels feud to a whole new level. Fans stopped seeing Jericho as just another heel. They now saw him as a cold, unpredictable, morally unhinged figure. Even though it wasn't scripted, that punch became one of the most hauntingly real moments in WWE history. Braun Strowman and the brutal wake-up call from Brock Lesnar. On one side stood the Beast, Brock Lesnar, and on the other, the monster among men, Braun Strowman. Just hearing those names together was enough to know this match was never going to be gentle. WWE hyped their Royal Rumble clash as a collision between two titans, and true to form, it quickly spiraled beyond the realm of scripted entertainment. At the time, Strowman was being positioned as a future main event star, and this was his chance to prove himself against a top-tier name like Lesnar. But during the match, Strowman got a bit too intense, landing a knee strike with far more force than intended. Unfortunately for him, Lesnar is not the kind of man to let something like that slide. Without hesitation, Lesnar fired back. A stiff punch right to the head, real, heavy, and completely unscripted, sent Strowman staggering. This wasn't part of the show. It was pure instinct from a former UFC champion who's no stranger to hard-hitting combat. As if to drive the message home, Lesnar barked at Strowman, "Slow the F*** down, you idiot." A clear warning that he wouldn't be used as anyone's proving ground. Strowman later recalled that moment in an interview, admitting the punch made his head spin like a top, but also taught him a valuable lesson about controlling force in the ring. Thankfully, once the match ended and both men returned backstage, they shook hands and put the incident behind them. But for fans watching live, that punch was unforgettable. It was one of those rare moments in WWE where the line between fiction and reality didn't just blur, it nearly vanished. Earthquake versus Koji Katau, when the WWE ring turned truly chaotic. In the long history of WWE, there have been matches that broke through the boundaries of scripted entertainment, but few did so as controversially as the clash between John "Earthquake" Tenta and Koji Katau. This wasn't just a botched performance. It was one of the rare moments when WWE dipped into the realm of too real, in the worst way possible. The match took place on April 1, 1991, at Wrestle Dream, a cross-promotional event between WWE and Japan's Super World of Sports, SWS. Themed Worlds Collide, it was meant to be a celebration of international wrestling, featuring stars from both companies. Names like Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, and Yoshiaki Yatsu were on the card, but the showdown that stole all the headlines was Earthquake versus Koji Katau. Both men had backgrounds in sumo wrestling. John Tenta had competed professionally in Japan, while Koji Katau had reached the prestigious rank of Yokozuna before being expelled from the sport due to disciplinary issues. Backstage before the match, Earthquake suspected that Koji might try to sabotage the bout. That gut feeling turned out to be right. From the opening bell, it was clear Koji wasn't going to play along. He refused to sell moves, ignored ring psychology, and basically disregarded every rule of pro wrestling cooperation. The match fell apart fast, nothing but slaps, awkward circling, and zero coordination. At one point, Earthquake shouted in frustration, "This is professional wrestling." A real-life plea for Koji to get with the program. Things went completely off the rails when Koji kicked the referee, forcing a disqualification and ending the match in total chaos. But he wasn't done yet. As he exited the ring, he grabbed a microphone and shouted to the Japanese crowd, "Pro wrestling is fake." Then he stormed backstage. That sentence hit like a bomb. It was a direct assault on Kayfabe, the unspoken agreement between wrestlers and fans that what happens in the ring is real. For WWE, this wasn't just a bad match. It was one of the most blatant acts of disrespect toward the entire wrestling industry. Backstage, chaos erupted. Names like Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, and Randy Savage were reportedly waiting to confront Koji. But before anything happened, he had already stormed off, allegedly taking out his anger on his wife, Hachira Tanaka, who also served as SWS's manager. Shortly after, Koji was fired from the company. Despite the uproar, Koji made one final WWE appearance at WrestleMania 7, teaming with Genichiro Tenryu to defeat Demolition. That would be his last match in WWE. He later transitioned to MMA, where the punches were real and the outcomes unscripted, more in line with his defiant, unpredictable nature. Yokozuna and the Bonsai drop that sent chills down viewers' spines. Ask Bret Hart to name the opponents he felt safest with in the ring, and Yokozuna's name will almost certainly come up. Despite his massive size, Yokozuna was known for his incredible body control. Many of his fellow wrestlers praised him for how carefully he protected his opponents, often calling him surprisingly gentle for a man his size. But not everyone was lucky enough to experience that gentleness. Daniel DeBeal, a virtually unknown jobber, became living proof that even Yokozuna had his limits. In one televised match, DeBeal took Yokozuna's signature move, the Bonsai drop. If you've ever seen the clip, you'll understand why it's still talked about years later. Unlike the way he usually performed the move on stars like Bret Hart or Hulk Hogan, balancing most of his weight on his feet before slowly lowering himself down, this time, Yokozuna appeared to crash his entire body straight onto DeBeal without restraint. The reason? It was later revealed in Bret Hart's memoir. DeBeal had reportedly disrespected Mr. Fuji, Yokozuna's longtime manager, backstage before the match. And once they stepped into the ring, Yokozuna didn't hesitate to turn what should have been a choreographed move into a brutal warning. Former WCW wrestler Crowbar, who witnessed the aftermath, recounted the moment in an interview. Daniel DeBeal was seriously injured after that. But he didn't say a word. He still hoped WWE would bring him back. I'm telling you, that wasn't just a stiff move. He almost died in there. It was a haunting reminder that even in the world of scripted wrestling, a moment of real payback can leave a lasting and terrifying impression. C.J. Parker and Kevin Owens. One strike, one broken nose, and the start of a friendship. Before becoming Juice Robinson in AEW, known for his wild, free-spirited style, he was C.J. Parker, the environmental hippie of early NXT. But despite the unique character, Parker never connected with the crowd and was soon relegated to the role of a jobber, the guy who loses to make others look good. Ironically, it was Parker, the man seen as a stepping stone, who ended up leaving a lasting mark on Kevin Owens' debut match at NXT TakeOver, Our Evolution. It was supposed to be an easy win, a platform for Owens to showcase his power and charisma. But one strike changed everything, and made the moment very real, in the most literal way. During the match, Parker suddenly landed a sharp, open palm strike, so precise and forceful that it broke Kevin Owens' nose on the spot. Not only did Owens suffer the blow, but Parker's own hand split open from hitting the bridge of Owens' nose. Blood was everywhere. The match, for a few seconds, became something far more than performance. It became raw, brutal reality. Owens hit the mat. Parker went for the pin. But Owens kicked out right on cue, pushing through the pain and blood. When Parker hesitated, worried he'd gone too far, Owens simply said, "You just blew up my nose." Despite the injury, Owens wasn't angry. In fact, he saw it as the perfect, unexpected twist to make his debut unforgettable. There was no tension between them afterward, only mutual respect. Owens has since spoken fondly of Parker, calling him one of the people he respects most in the business. That accidental strike gave Owens exactly what he needed, an image of toughness, intensity, and grit that immediately stuck with the NXT audience. The moment Parker accidentally made the match too real was also the moment Kevin Owens made his mark, not just as a dominant newcomer, but as a man willing to bleed from day one. When Ken Shamrock and Vader turned a WWE match into a real fight. There's no question about it. Ken Shamrock is one of the toughest men to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. A legendary MMA fighter and member of the UFC Hall of Fame, Shamrock had taken down some of the fiercest opponents in the cage long before joining WWE. With his aggressive striking style and natural fighter's instinct, he brought real combat energy and intensity to the world of sports entertainment. But during his clash with Big Van Vader at In Your House, A Cold Day in Hell, Shamrock quickly learned he wasn't the only one who could hit hard. In a moment of pure instinct, he accidentally drove a knee straight into Vader's nose, hard enough to break it. The painful impact was very real, and it was only the beginning of a brutally unscripted moment inside the WWE ring. Vader, known for his brute strength and toughness, didn't hesitate to respond. He delivered a solid punch right back, a receipt, as it's called in the wrestling world. It's the term wrestlers use for a real shot given in return when someone gets too rough. Shamrock dropped to the mat, but instead of being upset, he was actually thrilled. In an interview with Chris Van Vliet, Shamrock recalled, "It was just a reflex, like sparring. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I didn't even realize how hard I hit until afterward." He even compared Vader's punch to a brutal chair shot he once took from The Rock, saying both were unforgettable learning experiences. Surprisingly, there was no bad blood after the match. Vader approached Shamrock in a calm and professional manner. He walked up to me and said, "That knee broke my nose." I was shocked and apologized right away, Shamrock said. But he just smiled and replied, "No worries. Great match." For Shamrock, it was the first time a WWE match truly felt like a real fight. He later admitted, "At the time, it wasn't fun. But watching it back, I thought, not bad. That was actually pretty cool." The moment didn't just showcase the toughness and respect between two ring warriors, it revealed a raw, unpredictable side of WWE. A side where the line between performance and reality fades, and two legends collide not just in character, but in spirit. When Daniel Pewer became the punching bag for real blows. Remember Daniel Pewer? The winner of Tough Enough Season 4, a former MMA fighter who entered WWE with big expectations of becoming their next breakout star. But instead of rising to fame, he became one of the most talked about examples of what happens when you try to go real in professional wrestling. Pewer made headlines after a now infamous segment on SmackDown in 2004, where Kurt Angle challenged the Tough Enough contestants to a shoot-style wrestling match. Unexpectedly, Pewer locked Angle into a Kimura submission, nearly forcing the Olympic gold medalist to tap out live on television. WWE producers rushed to end the segment to avoid disaster, but backstage, Pewer's move sparked major heat. It wasn't just that he tried to show up a legend, it was the attitude. Many veterans saw him as cocky and disrespectful, someone who didn't understand or respect the culture of WWE. He acted like a star before proving himself in the ring, and that didn't sit well with the locker room. So, when Royal Rumble 2005 rolled around, seasoned names like Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Hardcore Holly decided it was time to give Pewer a reality check. He entered the match early at number 3, not to shine, but to be made an example of. As soon as he stepped in the ring, the veterans unleashed a flurry of real, brutal chops to his chest. The slaps echoed through the arena like gunshots, no pulling punches, no mercy. Fans could hear the pain and sense the real animosity boiling just beneath the surface. Pewer was cornered, pummeled, and eventually thrown out of the match. That appearance would end up being his one and only moment on WWE's main roster. Shortly after, he was sent to OVW for further development, but it wasn't long before WWE quietly released him. He had brief stints in companies like ROH and NJPW, but his career never fully recovered from that night at Royal Rumble. Years later, Pewer opened up about the incident. In interviews, he referred to Benoit, Eddie, and Holly as bullies. About Holly, he said, "I once asked him for help, and later he trashed me in his book just to sell more copies." He admitted once respecting Benoit and Guerrero, but after what happened, that admiration turned into disappointment. "I thought they were good people, but that night showed me the opposite." Despite the bitterness, Pewer was ultimately just another casualty of WWE's ruthless backstage culture at the time, a place where hazing newcomers wasn't rare, but expected. The moment he was beaten down in the middle of the Royal Rumble became one of the most controversial scenes in WWE history. Which moment left the biggest impression on you? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the jaw-dropping stories, only here on Wrestling Sphere.